Use the rest of my time to speak in this House today.
I call Jamie Strange.
Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill. I'd also like to join the Honourable Nikki Kay in talking about the Select Committee process. We do have an excellent Select Committee, Education Workforce, very ably chaired by Sarah Dowie, who's doing an excellent job, and I acknowledge Honourable Tim McIndoe, who's a part of that committee. So. Unfortunately, I wasn't present for the. He's okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't present for the submissions, but I have taken the time to read a number of them, and those submissions will make their way into my speech as I make my way through it. So, as we've heard, this bill supports better outcomes for the tertiary sector by three main areas. Number one, giving government agencies better tools to identify and manage questionable behaviour in tertiary education organisations. Number two, by imposing higher consequences where contract breaches or illegal activities are confirmed. And number three, by broadening protection and arrangements for students studying across our system to support student wellbeing. Now, we had 2,000 organisations and individuals make submissions on this bill, so certainly this aspect of education is something that there is a high level of public interest in. And it's actually my third time in 2 days speaking on education matters, so it's quite nice as a former teacher, the fact that education is getting a bit of a spotlight in the House just over the last couple of days. So the key aspect of this bill is around strengthening our education system, making sure it's strong, making sure it's robust, making sure it works for young people as well as families, as well as parents, to basically provide for our community. Mr. Speaker, I'm a big believer in public education and the outcomes that a strong education system provides for our country. I'm just going to focus for a couple of minutes here on some of the miscellaneous amendments in the bill. So the first one is about enabling state and state-integrated schools to manage international student misconduct outside of school, including the use of a stand-down, suspension, exclusion or an expulsion, so they can uphold their contractual duty to ensure international students' health, safety and well-being. Now this, I know it's a miscellaneous amendment, but I see this as very important, Mr. Speaker, because we do have a number of international students come to our shores. We certainly are a very popular destination, and that's a credit to our institutions, to our teachers, to our lecturers. And it's not just at the tertiary level where international students come. They come right through the levels, right from primary, intermediate, high school, and even partnership schools. So I believe. Which one? There you go. So look, on this topic of international students, I'm very pleased that this bill tightens up in this area, because it is important that powers are given to boards of trustees. We do appreciate the international students coming, and we welcome them with open arms, and will continue to do so. But it's important that there are safeguards in this area. And the particular safeguards in this bill, they particularly relate to if a student's having a bit of a challenging time and maybe pushes the boundaries further than they maybe should, then there are powers to sit the student down and say, hey, look, this is not working. Have a talk to their parents and work it out, which is just common sense. As a school teacher, I certainly taught a number of international students, and it can be challenging for them at times coming to a new country. A lot of times, particularly if they're younger, they will leave their family for a period of time to come over here. There's a language barrier. Confidence needs to be built. Sometimes they don't understand areas around safety. And I think one of the key aspects for the international students is that they're often put into a boarding situation with a family, and it can often be a completely different environment to what they're used to in their country. So they certainly can at times be a little bit unsettled, and sometimes they settle down, but sometimes that there are a few challenges around that. So look, certainly this bill recognises some of the challenges in that space, and puts some things in place, and not just for the school and the other students, but also for the protection of the international student who is over here, to make sure they have a good experience in New Zealand as well. I'd like to look at another amendment here, and that's and that's around changes to or clarifying the number of technical matters relating to funding and reporting. Now, on this area of funding and in terms of funding private and public institutions in a fair and equitable way, so we did have quite a few submissions on this, and I'm just going to mention a couple of those submissions now because this was an area that certainly came up in the committee. So we had a submission here from the New Zealand Union of Students Association, and they talked about the treatment of international students, but they also, oh no, sorry, that was international students. The Otago University Students Association. So basically what they said was, we are concerned that the provision to provide private institutions with the same funding as public institutions will lead to the dilution of funding for these public tertiary providers. The purpose of public institutions such as the University of Waikato, which they were writing from, is not to solely provide returns to its shareholders, but instead to produce well-elected individuals who will serve society. Large public institutions such as the University of Waikato are accountable to the community and to other external organisations such as OUSA, which holds to account the organisation on the quality of the service in which they provide. Private institutions are accountable only to their shareholders and in providing maximum returns on shareholder wealth. So what the submission does is it clearly outlines the difference between the private institutions and the public institutions. And they're strongly advocating for the same funding, rather than private institutions having a bit of a better deal. And that's certainly something that our people on this side of the House agree with. A strong public education system is absolutely vital to our country. Just a couple of other amendments here. Another one says, it talks in the bill there about making it an offence for a person to falsely award credits to a student studying towards a qualification. And this is in relation to NZQA, allowing NZQA to pursue action against TEOs for falsely awarding credits to students who have not been appropriately assessed for those credits. This is certainly common sense. I mean, it is important that we have a certain amount of robustness in our system around credits, and if people are falsely being awarded credits, then I think everyone in this House would agree that that's something that we don't want to see in our country, and so this bill allows some teeth for NZQA to act when that situation arises. Another one here, it talks about allowing TEIs to pool assets from a number of trusts to create a common fund for investment purposes. Pooling assets into a common fund provides economies of scale and administrative efficiencies and creates the opportunity to generate a higher return on an investment. So, Mr Speaker, it is important within an institution to look at the finances, as we know. And if they can cut down on costs by pooling funds, well, it certainly makes sense, by pooling resources, administration costs. So that's this bill, like I said at the start, there is a lot of common sense here, and there's a lot of cross-party agreement on these things, and that's an important aspect. Just a couple more in my last sort of couple minutes here. The bill also talks about changing the term private training establishment to independent tertiary establishment to allay PTE concerns that the private implies they are for-profit, when in practice PTEs covers a range of types of organisational forms, from small trusts to large conglomerate not-for-profit and for-profit education providers. So obviously we've had a bit of an issue here, and it has come through in some of the submissions around some of the private training institutions who are not-for-profit being lumped in with the profit-making institutions. And so they've clearly said, well, look, we aren't for profit, and so it needs to be clearly stated that we aren't, and have the aspect there of difference. So we'll be listening to submitters on that, and I'll probably just finish with one more. Modernising the TEI, this one's for you. Modernising the TEI council operations, such as allowing councils to convene meetings via teleconferences and other electronic means. Now, I'm not sure if the member opposite knows much about the modern electronic means, but this is basically just about. There's about better use things like social media, or other sort of aspects around there. So look, Mr Speaker, I'm very happy to speak about this bill, very happy that we have general consensus across the House, just sort of tightening up on a few areas within the education sector, and I commend the bill to the House. Thank you.
Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable Tim